Look at your neighbor and tell them, I'm not done yet. Now tell yourself, this is not my ending. Some of you walked in here tired, frustrated, and quietly questioning if you still have it in you. Life knocked the wind out of you. Plans fell apart, doors closed, people left. But hear me clearly, what broke you did not bury you. If you're still breathing, heaven is not finished with you yet. There comes a moment in every life when survival is no longer enough. A moment when God says, you can't stay where you are, but you don't have to stay who you were. This is that moment. It's time to restart. Not because you failed, but because you've learned. It's time to refocus because distraction has been robbing your destiny, and it's time to rebuild, not with fear, but with faith, wisdom, and fire. You didn't lose everything. You lost what couldn't go where you're going. What's left is what God plans to use. So wipe your eyes, straighten your back, and get your spirit ready because this is your comeback season. Some of you have been carrying shame for seasons that God already released you from. You've been apologizing for chapters that were necessary for your growth, beating yourself up for decisions you made when you didn't have the wisdom you have now. But hear me clearly today, shame is not conviction and guilt is not growth. Shame paralyzes, but God's voice mobilizes. When God calls you to restart, He never hands you a label of failure. He hands you an invitation to begin again with insight. The enemy wants you to think starting over means you lost, but heaven says starting over means you survived. A restart does not mean you are weak. It means you are wise enough to know when something has expired. There are seasons that look productive, but are no longer purposeful. You stayed because you thought endurance meant obedience. But endurance without direction becomes self-inflicted suffering. God never asked you to keep building on cracked foundations. When He says restart, He is saying, I love you too much to let you keep pretending this is working. Letting go is not quitting when God is the one closing the chapter. Shame whispers that people will remember how you fell, how you failed, how you didn't get it right the first time. But the truth is, people don't hold the power you think they do. The same ones who watched you fall will also watch you rise, and some of them will be inspired by your courage to stand back up. You are not restarting to impress people. You are restarting to align with purpose. God never consults your past to determine your future. He consults His plan. Starting over requires humility, but humility is not humiliation. Humility is the strength to say, I don't have to be right. I need to be aligned. Pride keeps you stuck trying to protect an image. Humility frees you to protect your destiny. Some of you are exhausted not because the work is hard, but because the work is wrong for this season. God is calling you to restart so you can breathe again, dream again, hope again. When you restart without shame, you stop hiding. You stop explaining. You stop rehearsing old regrets and start responding to new instructions. You realize that God is not shocked by your detours. He already built grace into the journey. The restart is not God giving you another chance. It is God revealing the chance He had planned all along. What looks late to you is right on time in the hands of God. So lift your head. Wipe the dust off your faith. Take the step you've been afraid to take. You are not starting from nothing. You are starting from experience. You are not restarting as the same person who failed. You are restarting as the one who learned. And when God restarts a life, He doesn't repeat the pain. He reintroduces the promise. Somewhere along the way, your vision got blurred, not because you stopped believing, but because life kept happening faster than you could process it. Responsibilities piled up, disappointments stacked on disappointments, and slowly your focus drifted from purpose to pressure. You started waking up just trying to get through the day instead of waking up driven by what God put inside you. But hear me today, what you focus on will shape what you become. If your eyes stay on what hurt you, you'll bleed into every new season. God is calling you to refocus because distraction is costing you more than you realize. Refocus does not mean ignore reality. It means prioritize correctly. You can acknowledge the storm without steering the ship into it. Some of you have been giving front row attention to people who no longer have a speaking role in your future. You've been magnifying the noise instead of the assignment. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you if he can just distract you. He knows that a divided vision produces a delayed destiny. That's why you've been busy but not effective, active but not advancing, moving but not progressing. There are too many voices competing for your attention, and not every voice deserves a vote. Just because someone can speak doesn't mean they should influence your direction. God's instructions are often quiet, and if your life is too loud, you'll miss them. Refocusing requires intentional silence, the kind that allows you to hear again what you once knew but forgot. When God refocuses you, He doesn't always change your assignment, He changes your perspective. What once felt like a burden becomes meaningful when you see it through purpose instead of pressure. You cannot rebuild your future while constantly replaying your past. Reflection is healthy, obsession is not. Some of you have been staring at what went wrong so long that you've missed what's still possible. God is not asking you to deny what happened. He's asking you to stop letting it define what happens next. The rearview mirror is smaller than the windshield for a reason. You were never meant to drive your life looking backward. When you refocus, you stop reacting and start responding. You don't jump at every crisis or panic at every delay. You learn the discipline of staying centered. You understand that everything urgent is not important and everything loud is not significant. Refocus brings clarity, and clarity brings peace. That peace is not the absence of trouble. It is the presence of alignment. God is calling you to adjust your aim, not abandon your dream. The vision still works if you work it, but it requires your attention. Refocus means choosing faith over fear, assignment over approval, obedience over opinion. When your eyes are back where they belong, your strength returns, your passion reignites, and your steps regain direction. What you fix your focus on in this season will determine whether you merely survive or finally step into everything God promised you. Some of you are tired, not because you've been lazy, but because you've been loyal to things that were never meant to last. You poured into people who never poured back. You carried responsibilities that were never assigned to you. You kept showing up, hoping things would change, while your strength kept leaking out day by day. But hear this truth today: everything that costs you peace is too expensive. God is calling you to release what drained you because He cannot refill hands that refuse to open. There are relationships that were seasonal, but you tried to make them permanent. There were roles you stepped into out of love, fear, or obligation, but they slowly became emotional debt. You thought holding on was strength, but sometimes holding on is resistance to God's next move. Letting go is not abandonment, it is alignment. God removes certain weights not because they are evil, but because they are excessive. You cannot run your race carrying what was never yours to begin with. What drains you is not always obvious. Sometimes it looks productive, spiritual, or even necessary. You say yes because you don't want to disappoint anyone, but every yes costs you something. When your yes is automatic and your no is non-existent, burnout is inevitable. God never designed you to be everything to everyone. Even Jesus withdrew, even He rested. If the Son of God needed boundaries, why do you think you don't? Releasing what drained you requires honesty. You have to admit that some things you prayed for have now become the very things you need to lay down. Growth will always offend the version of you that survived by coping instead of living. You are not selfish for protecting your energy. You are responsible. God is not asking you to be available. He is asking you to be effective, and an exhausted spirit cannot build a renewed future. Some of you are holding on to guilt, replaying old mistakes, carrying shame that God already forgave. Emotional baggage is just as draining as toxic relationships. When you keep rehearsing what went wrong, you drain your faith and weaken your confidence. God's mercy is not temporary, and His forgiveness is not fragile. If He let it go, why are you still holding it? Release the weight of yesterday so you can walk freely into tomorrow. When you finally release what drained you, something powerful happens. You create room for peace, room for clarity, room for joy, room for God to move without resistance. You discover that rest is not laziness, it is restoration. And restoration is preparation for what's next. God is not taking anything from you to punish you. He is removing it to protect you. The release may feel uncomfortable, but staying drained is dangerous. You were never meant to live depleted, resentful, and worn down. This season is about holy separation, not isolation. Let go of what emptied you so God can fill you with strength, vision, and purpose again. Some of you have been asking God to fix what's around you while He's been quietly working on what's within you. You've been praying for doors to open, for situations to change, for people to shift. But God says the rebuilding starts on the inside. Before He restores what you lost externally, He stabilizes what was shaken internally. Because if He gives you a new season with an old spirit, the pressure will break you all over again. You cannot rebuild a life with the same mindset that allowed it to crumble. That doesn't mean you were wrong or weak. It means you've grown. Pain has a way of revealing cracks you didn't know existed. Disappointment exposes fears you ignored. Failure shines a light on insecurities you covered with business. God allows the shaking not to destroy you, but to show you what needs to be strengthened. Inner healing is not optional, it is foundational. Rebuilding from the inside out means confronting what you avoided. It means dealing with the anger you buried, the trust you lost, the confidence that took a hit. You learned how to function, but you forgot how to feel. You learned how to survive, but you stopped expecting joy. God wants to heal the places you kept hidden, not to shame you, but to free you. He doesn't heal what we pretend isn't broken. Some of you are trying to move forward while carrying unresolved wounds, and every new opportunity triggers old pain. That's why God slows you down. Stillness is not delay, it's divine surgery. He is rewiring your reactions, renewing your mind, strengthening your discernment. What feels like God holding you back is often God holding you together. When God rebuilds you internally, He restores your confidence, but not arrogance. He gives you courage, but not recklessness. You come back stronger, but also wiser. You don't trust blindly anymore, but you don't live guarded either. You learn the balance between faith and wisdom. That balance is what keeps your future secure. Inner rebuilding also reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself through the lens of what you lost and start seeing yourself through the lens of what remained. The fact that you're still standing is proof of resilience. God strips away false labels so He can remind you who you really are. You are not your failure. You are not your trauma. You are not your worst season. You are what God says you are, and that truth becomes the anchor of your rebuild. When the inside is restored, the outside begins to respond. Your decisions become clearer. Your relationships become healthier. Your boundaries become stronger. You stop repeating cycles because the root has been healed. God is not rushing this process because He's invested in your longevity. This rebuild is not cosmetic, it's structural. And when God finishes rebuilding you from the inside out, what He builds this time will last. Some of you have been looking at the broken pieces of your life and calling them evidence of loss, but God is calling them materials. You see ruins, He sees resources. You see what fell apart, He sees what can be repurposed. Nothing you went through was random, and nothing you survived was wasted. The pain didn't disqualify you, it trained you. The tears didn't weaken you, they watered something that's about to grow. What broke you taught you lessons success never could. Success makes you comfortable, but adversity makes you conscious. It sharpens your discernment, it deepens your compassion. It forces you to ask better questions and build with more intention. You don't rebuild the same way after you've been hurt. You rebuild wiser, slower, and stronger. God never wastes a wound when you're willing to learn from it. The ruins hold blueprints. In every disappointment, there is information. In every failure, there is instruction. You now know what to avoid, what to adjust, and what to protect. You learned what happens when boundaries are ignored. You learned the cost of silence. You learned the danger of settling. Those lessons are not scars to hide, they are tools to use. The same experience that almost broke you will become the wisdom that sustains you. Some of you are ashamed of the rubble, afraid people will see what didn't work. But transparency is not exposure when God is involved, it's transformation. When you own your story, you take its power away from shame. God uses honest people, not perfect ones. Your testimony doesn't come from what stayed intact. It comes from what you rebuilt after it collapsed. Using the ruins also means forgiving yourself. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time. Condemning yourself for not knowing then what you know now is unfair and unproductive. Growth changes your standards, not your value. God is not calling you to rebuild with regret. He's calling you to rebuild with revelation. What you know now qualifies you for what's next. When God rebuilds, He often uses familiar pieces in unfamiliar ways. He'll take your past struggles and turn them into purpose. He'll take your story and make it a bridge for someone else. He'll take your survival and transform it into strength. The very area where you were wounded becomes the place where you're anointed. What tried to stop you will end up serving you. The ruins are not a reminder of defeat. They are proof of survival. You're still breathing. You're still believing. That means God is not finished. Pick up the pieces, not with bitterness, but with boldness. Build again, not from fear, but from faith. When you use the ruins as resources, you don't just rebuild, you redeem the story. And what God redeems, He restores with greater purpose than before. Some of you are stepping into this next season with a quiet strength you didn't have before. You're not loud about it. You're not trying to prove anything. But there's an authority on your life now that only comes from surviving what should have destroyed you. When you rise again, you're not rising as a victim of what happened. You're rising as a witness that it didn't win. God never brings you back the same way you left. He brings you back with oil on your head and fire in your spirit. Renewed authority doesn't come from titles, applause, or position. It comes from obedience forged in adversity. You know now who you are and who you are not. You know what you will tolerate and what you won't. You've been through enough to stop begging for approval and start walking in alignment. When you speak now, there's weight behind your words because they've been tested by pain and proven by perseverance. This authority shows up in how you move. You don't rush like you used to. You don't panic under pressure. You don't chase validation. You stand flat-footed in faith because you've seen God bring you through too much to doubt Him now. The storms that once shook you now serve as reminders of His faithfulness. You don't just believe God can, you know He will. Rising with renewed authority also means you stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You don't dim your light to protect fragile egos. You don't apologize for growth. You understand that walking in your calling will offend people who benefited from your silence. But you're not here to be liked. You're here to be obedient. Authority requires courage, and courage demands clarity. God trusts you with more now because you've proven you can handle less. You've learned stewardship through loss. You've learned gratitude through absence. You've learned humility through correction. That process prepared you to lead, to influence, to build without ego. You're no longer driven by ambition. You're guided by assignment. And assignment always comes with authority. When you rise this time, you rise with discernment. You recognize distractions before they drain you. You sense misalignment early. You don't ignore red flags because you've already paid the price for ignoring them once. Wisdom becomes your covering and peace becomes your confirmation. You don't move unless God moves, and that patience multiplies your power. This is not just a comeback, it's a commissioning. God is positioning you to stand, to speak, and to serve with confidence. What tried to break you only refined you. What delayed you only developed you. Now you rise not in your own strength, but clothed in grace, anchored in truth, and backed by heaven. And when you walk in renewed authority, the world doesn't just see you rise, they feel it. Before you leave this moment, I need you to hear this with your spirit, not just your ears. You did not survive what you survived just to exist quietly. You didn't make it through the storm to sit on the sidelines of your own destiny. God didn't pull you out, clean you up, and carry you through just to leave you unfinished. This is not recovery. This is resurrection. What tried to break you didn't know who was backing you. What walked away didn't realize it was making room. What fell apart didn't fail. It fulfilled its assignment by pushing you into alignment. You are not late. You are not behind. You are right on schedule for a restart that has heaven's approval on it. So stand up in your spirit, shake off the dust of disappointment, drop the weight of yesterday, lift your eyes and square your shoulders, because this is the moment where fear loses its grip and faith takes its place. You are not restarting as the same person. You are restarting anointed, focused, healed, and authorized. Let the old version of you stay in the old season. You don't owe yesterday another explanation. You don't need permission to become who God called you to be. The grace that carried you then is the same grace commissioning you now. So go ahead, restart with courage, refocus with clarity, rebuild with wisdom, rise with authority. And when you walk out of this place, walk like someone who knows the comeback is not coming, it's already here.